The Gilded Spire. Chapter 1. Rocky. Rocky scraped the foil from his last scratch card with a chewed thumbnail, each silver curl falling like dandruff onto the floor. Nothing. No jackpot, no reprieve, just another slip of glossy cardboard to crumple in his palm and curse with a low growl that startled the shop clerk. He shoved the paper into his jacket, sniffing against the faint chemical ache in his nostrils. The clinic hadn't told him about the medication. They'd told him about the miracle of it, the head swap, the transformation. They'd sold it as liberation. Be who you always wanted to be. They hadn't told him about the shakes, or the biting itch under the skin, or the little moments where the old body rebelled against the new head like two angry tenants trapped in the same room. He coughed, and the cough came out wrong, too guttural, not entirely human. When the sliding door hissed open, he stepped out into the suspended walkway. 3,000 feet above the churning black fog, the air was thin and tinged with grit. The city hung above itself, like a tumor growing on its own bulk. Skyscrapers jutted like crooked teeth, their glass and steel faces blurred by sandstorm and drizzle. The city was pregnant and bursting, ready to split its seams. Its boulevards carried more faith and hunger than they could bear. A line of Hare Krishna zealots paraded past, barefoot on the slick tiles, their saffron robes dragging wet. Their voices were raw from chanting, crashing against each other like cymbals. The end, the end, the end is already here. One had 4 mouths grafted along his jawline, singing in layered harmonies like a broken organ. Another's eyes glowed phosphorescent blue, rolled up white in perpetual rapture. Rocky pushed through them, muttering, but a hand clawed at his sleeve, papery, desperate. He shook it off. Across the haze, through a split in the smog, a beam of pink light speared into the clouds, waving back and forth, calling all who gazed. A casino's beacon shivering in the storm. At its tip, holograms danced, dice rolling endlessly, coins raining in the sky. The whole thing obscene, a luminous wound in the skyline. Rocky paused before a shop window, arrested by the blue glow of the screen inside. The TV was vomiting headlines about the Sultan's arrival, high dignitary spectacle, wealth incarnate. Cameras zoomed on his entourage of thin, almost glass-bodied servants and the ostentatious, camel-shaped caravan he dragged through the city. For a moment, Rocky's breath stalled, right there. In that wet shimmer of neon and static, the idea ignited. Slip inside the casino, stalk the Sultan, steal what could never be his. He laughed to himself, and it came out as a wet yelp, canine around the edges. No matter. Plans needed scaffolding. He knew where to go. On the way down through the walkways and rope-hung bridges, he skimmed pockets with the instinct of a rat. Wallets, chips, monies, a handful of tokens, and a set of fobs, keys dangling with dull weight. He didn't notice the unlucky woman he'd lifted them from, a pale and timid woman with damp hair and a bag that stunk of perfume. Just another mark, another step in the tangle the city was already knitting around them. The lower levels stank of copper wiring and mildew. The neon signs sweated light, bleeding through corrugated shutters. That was where the ID dealer lived, a den strung together from cables and hoarded junk, sparks snapping like insects in the air. The place looked less like a workshop than a fire hazard dreaming of its own funeral. The dealer himself was wiry and fidgeting, his skin patterned with tattoos that shifted faintly under the glow like restless snakes. "Rocky," he said in a voice sharp as glass, "back again. Always chasing ghosts." "Need a card," Rocky muttered. "Casino staff, busboy, something that gets me through the first door." The dealer grinned, teeth yellow in the neon wash. "Easy enough. Not cheap." Rocky slapped his handful of stolen bills, keys and fobs on the counter. They chatted, bartered, insulted each other with a kind of weary affection. A flash blinded Rocky and he rubbed his eyes. Behind them, the walls quivered under the strain of their own wiring. A cable smoked faintly, but neither man cared. the ID printed in a shower of sparks, a flimsy little card that could collapse under the weight of its own lie. Rocky pocketed it, leaving the den behind unseen. The wires hissed louder. Sparks flew. "You might want to put that out," said Rocky. The dealer turned to reach for an extinguisher. He capped the lid, but nothing came out. "Gotta go," said Rocky and left. By the time he hailed a tuk-tuk skimmer, the airwaves had turned sour. The driver kept the radio loud, a voice screaming manic sermons through the static, the scientist frothing about the glorious revolution of the augmented head, how the future would wear fur and scales and feathers, how evolution was too slow and the body too weak. His words spilled like oil, seeping into every ear. The other passengers twitched, argued with themselves, barked, croaked. One woman scratched at her throat until blood striped her nails. The driver laughed at nothing and swerved through the light storm. Rocky stared out at the smear of light and shadow, the city's endless vertical spread, until the tuk-tuk jolted to a halt. The casino rose before him like a mountain draped in neon. Its entrance pulsed with holographic koi swimming through the air, every ripple accompanied by jingles and slogans. Doors taller than cathedral gates yawned open, spilling light that stank of perfume, oil, and money. Rocky's throat tightened. He ducked left, slipping into the staff lockers, and found a white shirt and red vest abandoned on a bench. Quick as a thief in the night, he shrugged them on, buttoned, and smoothed his hair. By the time he joined the busboys in their alcove, his smile was fixed. "New?" he said, and they pounded their chests in rough greeting. A vehicle hummed at the curb, tires still hovering inches off the ground. From it stepped a man with the gait of indifference, dressed plainly, his many eyes unreadable. Without a word, he tossed Rocky a set of keys, a sleek black fob heavy with wealth. Rocky caught them, blinking. The man walked past without seeming to look back. And the night began. Chapter 2. Frederic had laid on the scaffolding for 3 days, a statue of patience atop a rusting industrial plant, eyes unblinking, body unmoving, suspended in the thin stink of oil and smog. The city below churned with sandstorms and neon, unaware of the silent predator perched above. His spider-like head, a lattice of glossy black carapace and shifting, multicolored, iridescent eyes, surveyed every angle. To the unknowing observer, he might have been dead, or dreaming in some deeper, more dangerous sleep. He had, in fact, perfected hibernation, a state that arrested time in his limbs and left only his awareness. 500 yards away, a tall man in a dark suit strode into the factory floor, flanked by bodyguards whose polished shoes struck sparks against the corroded metal. Frederic's finger tightened on the trigger of his scoped rifle. The bullet left with a whisper that would have been mistaken for the hiss of a leaking pipe. It danced and swerved, defying gravity, slicing through the fog and smoke like a silver needle, guided by a will other than physics. It entered the man's head, passed through as if reality had bent aside, and exited with a soft, wet pop. Frederic rose in a single, fluid motion, gathering his rifle and tools, every limb articulating with machine-like elegance. By the time the tall man wavered and felt the warm flow of blood from his eyes, nose, and forehead, Frederic had already vanished, shadows swallowing him whole. Chaos erupted, bodyguards shouted, metal clanged, alarms rattled. Yet in the midst of pandemonium, one predator had already returned to the city. He spoke into the micro-transceiver lodged near his mandible. "We have another job, I see," he clicked. A voice, tinny and sarcastic, responded. "Was that a pun?" Frederic's antennae twitched. "No time for puns. Details." "Corrupt politician. Widow hired us to exact retribution. Maybe larger than anticipated. Window is short." His many eyes shifted independently, capturing angles a normal humans could never perceive. "Casino meeting. Sultan involved, oil baron family." Frederic's tongue clicked. "Acknowledged. I'll scope the location before committing." He moved ghost-like across the city, gliding, as if the night air had been written for him alone. Shadows bent around his limbs, steel beams and neon signs parted. Money could buy augmentations, but nothing bought the art of moving unseen. By the time he reached his safe house and hidden in a crumbling spire above the industrial sector, the city below was a quilt of fog, lights, and murmuring storms. He set down his rifle in a wall compartment, and the soft hiss of closing panels was the only sound besides the faint jazz spilling from the speakers. The shower sprayed hot water, curling over his antennas and the fine hairs on his head, steaming in the confined bathroom like a ritual purification. Limbs once stiff now eased into pliant readiness. The spider's patience, giving way to the human need for warmth. Dressed with surgical precision, he chose a slate grey suit, brown slim-fitting shoes, and a watch that gleamed with understated menace. Money clips and ID cards were inspected in silence. Files riffled through like pages of a sacred text, each containing identities that were not his, but could be made his in moments. He reached the rooftop garage and entered his black vehicle, a luxury cruiser that hovered effortlessly, a mechanical leviathan above the choking fog. Above the city, the elite lanes of the Sky Highway wound through dust and smoke, reserved for the few, and Frederic let the autopilot take him as he reclined, eyes scanning, antennae twitching, absorbing every flicker of the skyline. Below, holographic screens hawked pharmaceutical augmentation programs, a relentless celebration of what humanity might have become, furred, feathered, scaled, and smiling. The casino, the Gilded Spire, rose like a cathedral of excess, doors wider than some entire apartments, each step toward it resonating with purpose. Frederic stepped out, tossed his keys to the first busboy he saw, a gesture unnoticed in its elegance. Rocky caught them, unaware, a small collision of fate in a universe designed to tangle lives. Inside the foyer, Frederic moved with intention, eyes flicking in a silent 360-degree sweep. Cameras, patrol routes, entrances and exits, every detail catalogued and stored in the latticework of his mind. Without hesitation, he approached a blackjack table and bought chips enough for 2 men, a small ritual in a theatre of wealth. The casino itself was a living thing, both crowded and cavernous, humming with the tension of games, drinks, and the perpetual hum of chance. Waiters balanced glasses like dancers avoiding collisions. Fruit machines whirled, popped, and clattered in time with the heartbeat of the room. Patrons laughed, barked, and croaked, some already embracing their animal augmentations in ways subtle and grotesque. Frederic's dealer gestured for him to play, and with a soft tap on the table, the game began. Outside, the storm pressed against the glass windows, a reminder that chaos had its rhythms, but Frederic was already inside the current, tracing its flow, patient, inevitable, unseen. Chapter 3. Adrian. Adrian had never known luck. The city had always seemed to conspire against her, pressing in with smog and noise, a grinding machinery of misfortune. The augmentation, undertaken with high hopes and fevered anticipation, had barely shifted the odds. Her head felt heavier in the mornings, as if the new contours carried not just flesh, but the accumulated weight of disappointment. She left her apartment, a cramped cube stacked above a dealer's den, the smell of burnt circuitry faint but persistent in the stairwell. The metal steps wound upward in spirals, slick with condensation and the occasional droppings of scavenging rats. As she ascended, Adrian noticed the air was thicker, almost viscous today, a noxious blend of industrial residue, wet asphalt and smog. A rat darted across her path, leapt onto her ankle with absurd agility. Adrian kicked it off, grimacing, muttering complaints about the city's filth and chaos. The streets themselves were a jigsaw of contradictions. Below, neon lights flickered in erratic patterns, spilling green and purple reflections into puddles of chemical sludge. Street vendors shouted over the hum of traffic, hawking food with mechanical voices and synthetic aromas so strong they clung to the skin. Couriers with half-finished augmentations, faces warped by experimental heads, scuttled through the streets, brushing past pedestrians with indifferent momentum. Above, walkways arched high. But at this low level, the city pressed against the body, oppressive, urgent, unforgiving. Adrian wandered through the market district, every step a negotiation with chaos. Hollow signs trembled and bent toward her, offering products she could not afford and services she did not want. A street musician, augmented with 4 extra metal arms and a head shaped like a porcelain rabbit, played a violin that squealed like tortured metal. Adrian flinched, pressed a hand to her chest, and muttered complaints into the humid air. Eventually, she reached the megastore, a hulking offspring of IKEA, a fortress of commerce. The doors whirled open and the interior flooded with blinding LED light that turned the polished floors into mirrors. Holographic advertisements coiled around Adrian as she walked, projected swirling 3D animations of items that seemed almost sentient, laughed, groceries that winked, furniture that leaned towards her, whispering promises of comfort. Adrian pressed her palm to a screen, selecting the item she needed. The screen flared in response, a tangle of light and data coiling like a living thing. Teenagers shrieked as they raced down aisles, sending carts crashing into each other and laughing like chaos incarnate. One nearly collided with Adrian, eliciting a sharp gasp. "Watch it," she muttered, but the words were swallowed by the store's mechanical roar. At checkout, the holographic interface projected her shopping list in mid-air. "Can I interest you in our latest perfumes for the low price of 1,800 yen? Adrian reached for the box, but it slipped through her fingers, shattering the glass counter. Perfume sprayed in a cloud that burned the nostrils, heavy and cloying. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry." She tried to gather the pieces, flustered. "No worries, ma'am. Broke it, bought it. Section 48A, said the clerk, expression as flat as a slab of concrete. Adrian nodded numbly, paid with her palm, and left the store, the perfume leaking into her bag. As Adrian walked out and made her way across the gangway and adjusting her possessions, she went to check for her keys and found them gone. Panic rose, swift and unwelcome. She retraced her steps, asking the clerk and scanning the floor, but no keys appeared. She cursed under her breath, imagining every absurd possibility, dropped, stolen, lost to the machinery of the city. The keys had, in truth, already changed hands when Rocky pickpocketed them a few moments ago. The streets seemed to close in as she walked back towards her block. Desperation sharpened their perception, piles of refuse, rats scuttling across neon-slick sidewalks, puddles reflecting distorted, flickering holograms. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt, fried food, and the faint metallic tang of industrial runoff. Augmented citizens shuffled past, some muttering to themselves, some barking or croaking involuntarily from their heads, a constant, unsettling, cacophonous background chorus. When she reached her apartment block, the sight that greeted her made Adrian pause. Police had cordoned off the block, red tape slicing the streets like veins. Smoke curled upward from the lower floors. Officers moved with mechanical precision, shouting instructions over the chaos. "Excuse me, what's going on?" Adrian called. The officer, large and sweating, rubbed his belly and barked. "Precaution. Units burned, others damaged. Pretty much all of E-Zone." "But I live here in Zone E," Adrian protested. "Insurance?" the officer asked, voice tinged with contempt. "Of course. Only an idiot wouldn't have insurance." Adrian lowered her head, feeling the city press its weight down upon her. Her apartment gone, possessions gone, keys stolen, everything reduced to ash and smoke. In that moment, it was just too much for her to bear. Above the chaos, piercing through the murk, were the pink beams of the casino, the Gilded Spire. Its light carved through the fog like a siren, impossible to ignore. Adrian looked at the destruction, the city's indifferent cruelty, and made a decision. "I might as well try to win something back," she muttered. "The city has taken everything else." She hailed the tuk-tuk, the engine sputtering and whining, and let it carry them through the congested, filthy streets toward the glowing allure of the casino. With every jolt and sway, the city's pulse pressed against her, relentless and unforgiving. Adrian's misfortune had carried her here toward the intersection of fate with Rocky and Frederic, threads converging in ways they could neither see nor control. Chapter 4. The Casino. Rocky slid into the colossal car, its engine humming with a low roar, promising speed and violence. The interior was an opulent tomb, leather stretched taut over foam-like skin, chrome fixtures polished to a sheen that almost mocked him. He ran his fingers across the seams and edges, pressing at indentations with a scavenger's persistence. If he imagined hard enough, maybe this was his. Then click. A panel near the glove box slid open with the effortless grace of wealth, gliding out as if in slow motion. Rocky's eyes widened. Inside, a single card. Nothing else. He lifted it gingerly, expecting disappointment, but as his face hovered over its surface, lenses within the plastic flickered, scanning, the card shimmered, and a faint outline of his face bled into it, printing itself as though it had always belonged to him. Rocky exhaled, breath sharp. Just my luck. The words were half prayer, half curse. Pocketing the card, he stepped from the car into the vast carport. The ceiling stretched far above, its lights buzzing with nervous energy of overuse. Pools of oil gleamed like black mirrors beneath the rows of mechanical giants. The air reeked of exhaust, burnt rubber. Somewhere, a vent coughed dust. He walked slowly, savoring the strangeness of being in such a place, until the cavernous silence pressed on his nerves. The staff elevator waited at the far end, a narrow shaft box, coffin-like, devoid of mirrors. Elevator music trickled softly, a mockery of calm, while the ID badge in his hand glowed faintly, eager to serve. On the ground floor, he slipped into the staff toilets. The air hit him first. Ammonia, disinfectant, the faint sourness of bodies. Someone in the far stall groaned with the strain of digestion, followed by flatulence echoing off the tiled walls. The grunts were so rhythmic it almost sounded ritualistic. Rocky's eyes found what he needed, a blazer hanging carelessly on the hook of a stall door. He snatched it down, took off his busboy vest, and slipped into the blazer, the fabric too neat, too clean for his frame. He pinned the fresh badge to his chest. He glanced once at the stall as the unseen man expelled another sound, part growl, part sigh. Rocky left quickly, the door sighing shut behind him. Frederic, meanwhile, was already gliding across the casino floor. He moved with deliberate patience, tall frame cutting through the crowds. His insectile eyes never rested, counting, measuring, cataloguing. Every shuffle of the deck, every nervous blink of a dealer, every twitch of a gambler's hand was already accounted for. Chips accumulated before him like tribute. The casino noticed. It always noticed. Soon enough, the manager appeared, small, precise, smiling, with the confidence of someone who had never once gambled in his life. "I am Pong," he said with a bow. "Allow me to attend to you." Frederic inclined his head, rising slowly. Towering over the man, he collected his winnings, but Pong waved him off. "No need, sir. My men will handle it. Not a single credit will be misplaced. Not in the Gilded Spire." Frederic said nothing. Silence was power. They walked the floor together, past machines that howled for attention, holograms baying like spectral wolves. The air was thick with smoke, perfume, and desperation. Step by step, Pong guided him toward the stairwell, its handrails painted gold, spiraling upward toward privilege. At the top, the ceiling pressed low, the air dim and intimate. Two waiters waited immediately, practically tripping over themselves to thrust trays into Frederic's hands. Platters of d'oeuvres stacked too high, wine glasses trembling. Their movements were comic, rehearsed servitude, verging on parody. Frederic plucked one canapé and one glass with insectile precision, and the waiters scattered instantly, as though vanishing were part of the performance. "Sir," Pong said, gesturing ahead, "your table." The room was wide but dim, the ceiling low, smoke hanging heavy like a fog that had given up moving. A long round table dominated the space, illuminated by a single great light suspended above. Around it, men reclined with cigars clamped in their teeth, their smoke filling every crevice of the air with burnt oak and arrogance. Frederick took his seat, eyes scanning the room. Then he froze. Across the table, seated as if the world itself had conspired to mock him, sat the Sultan. Adrian had never wanted to be here. The casino was a swollen, glittering parasite, devouring whole nights and spitting out the hollowed shells of its patrons. But desperation, or perhaps emptiness, had led her to its doors. She muttered to herself as she stepped inside, curses, denials, fragments of sentences meant only to stave off the gnawing self-hatred. But the machines whispered louder. 3D holographic signs unfurled before her eyes, beckoning with certainty. She sat at a slot machine, palm pressed against the scanner. The machine jolted to life, reels spinning with feverish urgency. Adrian yanked the lever, stiff, clunky, resisting. Symbols blurred, slowed, and clicked into place. 4 cherries and a lemon. Close, but not enough. The machine chirped a tune, urging her to stay, to try again. Adrian cursed under her breath, pushing back from the seat. A patron stumbled into her, his head augmented into a wolf, drink slushing. "Sorry, Wall. These drinks kick like a bitch." He howled suddenly, a half bark, half laugh, before staggering again. His hand slammed the lever, and he stumbled away. The machine roared, symbols spun, lights blazing, then the jackpot. 5 gleaming symbols aligned with cruel, indifferent precision. The machine screamed with celebration. Adrian's eyes went wide, mouth dry. I won." The words came out strangled, unbelieving. Patrons turned, murmurs spreading like fire. The air thickened as bodies pressed closer. The machine continued to scream its triumph. And then, as if conjured, Pong appeared at Adrian's side. His smile was unchanged, his tone smooth as ever. "Good evening. My name is Pong. Please, this way." Chapter 5, The Royal Mint. Smoke clung to the room like a memory that refused to be forgotten. The ceiling was low enough to make the light feel aggressive. The single great lamp over the table poured down a pale, almost surgical sun that caught the edges of cigar ash and the wet sheen of expensive foreheads. Around the table sat 5 figures, shoulders drawn, as if they carried map folds of other people's fortunes inside them. They spoke softly, voices threaded with habit, the paramilitary cadence of those who had long ago learned to whisper what they were ashamed and proud of in equal measure. The Sultan leaned forward, cigar glowing like an ember torn from a dying star. Smoke curled around his jeweled fingers, rings clinking faintly as he gestured. His voice was deep, deliberate, carrying a rhythm that seemed older than the casino walls. "Power," he said, "is not gold in vaults, nor numbers blinking on a screen. Power is the ability to tell a man the sky is crimson, and for him to argue the shade instead of the claim. To possess the breath of others." The men around him chuckled, nodding too quickly. One leaned in, eager to echo. "Yes, Excellency. To bend truth itself. Why, last quarter I shifted assets through 3 nations, and each government thanked me for the privilege." Another puffed a cigar, eyes darting. "Influence, yes, but it's fragile, isn't it? Like glass underfoot. You misstep, it cracks. The trick is to keep dancing, as though the shards were never there." The Sultan exhaled smoke in a plume that seemed to crown his head. "Fragile. No. Influence is eternal. What breaks is the vessel, not the wine. A king dies, but the notion of kingship lingers." They laughed at this, though uneasily, as if unsure whether it was meant as jest or creed. Frederick's voice cut the smoke, cold, melodic, unhurried. "Then perhaps true power is not the wine, nor even the vessel. True power is the hand that decides when to shatter the glass, when to spill the goblet. Memory keeps the stain long after the table has been cleared." The table fell briefly silent. One of the men coughed, Another tapped ash too quickly into a crystal dish. The Sultan's gaze lingered on Frederic for a moment, eyes narrowed in something between amusement and suspicion. Then he laughed, a low, rolling laugh that filled the room and allowed the others to breathe again. "You bury wealth in living things," he said, voice smooth and final. "Foundations rot. Art turns. Paper burns. Put your coin inside men who cannot die on paper. Give it to a family. Buy them property. Then buy the property back with your own ledgers. The ledger forgets. Memory keeps the coin. This is power." It was as if the room had inhaled and held its breath for the sound. They laughed, obligingly. Not because the joke was funny, but because ritual demanded laughter. Around them, waiters hovered like nervous punctuation marks, two of them over-eager, panting at the edges, carried towers of canapes with the theatricality of a Cirque du Soleil act. They moved in sync, missteps small and comic. A tray tipped, a grape rolled onto the table. A waiter apologized with the kind of smile that was both plea and performance. The servants were comic relief in a chamber built for menace. Their clumsy grace refracted the room's menace into farce. Frederic's mandible prickled. The tick in his ear, the handler's voice came like a cold breeze down his spine. "Timeline has pushed forward," the voice said. "Target has entered the casino. He's on the stairway now. Window is short. Excuse yourself. Move." Frederic's hands were on his knees. He rose with the same unhurried precision that announced every small death he administered. "Excuse me," he said, with his voice a soft thing meant to smooth the surface of the conversation. "I must use the little boy's room. At my age, you understand, the body insists." He smiled, a cut of polite deception. The room exhaled smoke behind him, as if to mark his leaving. He pressed his palm to the micro-suede by the door, felt its synthetic snap under his fingers, enjoyed the slight resistance of the leather-bound handle. He walked slow, his movement measured, like the sliding of a blade in velvet. In the corridor, the casino seemed to press in, the carpet vibrating faintly with the transference of wealth, wallpaper patterned with heraldic advertisements, the breath of patrons like a warm current. As he rounded a corner, a guard intercepted him, small, pushy, the kind of man whose duty was precisely to be noticed. "Sir, you shouldn't be," the guard began. The sentence dissolved. Frederic's hands moved in a single decisive arc. The neck of the guard snapped as if a twig had been broken. The sound was not loud, but it had a terrible finality. Frederic caught the slumping body with a tenderness that was almost reverent and slid him into a linen trolley he found nearby. He bundled sheets and linens over the bulk, as if tucking a child in, then rolled the cart along the shadowed service passage until the body was hidden completely. He arranged the guard's uniform for himself with an exacting attention, the badge turned, collar straightened, tie adjusted. His slender fingers moved over the fabric as if familiarizing themselves with language. He buttoned, checked the microchip embedded in his ear. This had not been his plan. The kill not intended to precipitate the moment, but intent bent easily to opportunity under Frederic's hands. He fixed his tie and left the linen trolley. The smell of cigar smoke followed him like a shadow. He opened the service corridor toward the maintenance stair and in that fraction of an arc met Rocky. They passed like two instruments in a slow symphony. Rocky kept his gaze low, the patched blazer clinging oddly to him. Frederic kept his eyes high. A predator's disdain folded into polite muscle. Each gave the other the brief, necessary nod of recognition without greeting, a polite, almost automatic exchange that meant nothing and everything in the architecture of the casino. Rocky slipped into the main second-floor hall and stopped. Towards the spiral stair at the center rode a man whose bulk made the air itself seem to part. Flanked by three suited guards in dark shades and earpieces, he moved that certain way that announces an empire's appetite. On his chest, a badge glinted that was not quite the Sultan's crown, but the same language of power. "Keep an eye on the stairs," one guard barked at Rocky, voice flat and professional. "No one past this point while the client is in play." Rocky nodded, a small motion of compliance, and settled into his post like a man resuming a practiced lie. The tall man and a single guard entered the low ceiling room Frederic had just left. The other two stationed themselves like statues that flanked the door. Pong arrived like a polished piece of furniture, a manager with a suit creased in smooth, pleasant ways. He appeared at the threshold with Adrian in tow, shepherding her with all the gentle coercion of someone guiding a prized animal. Adrian, flushed and laughing from the suddenness of fortune, beamed like a child with a found coin. "Sorry, sir, I can't let you pass," Rocky said, voice small and professional, a man doing the thing he'd been taught to say. Pong's smile was the practiced thing of a man who knows how to reduce every authority to the weight of his wallet. "Brute!" Pong said, his voice syruped in mockery. "You're obviously confused. This is my casino, and you'll have no job if you continue in this ignorance." Rocky's answer was smooth with apology and bloodless contrivance. "Sorry, sir, Unit 24, first day. I'll memorize upper management by next shift." He stepped aside with the humble public grace of a man who must be seen obeying. Pong frowned once, then pushed through. Adrian passed on his arm, grin wide enough to hurt. She was incandescent, the slot machine jackpot still buzzing in her veins. For a moment she lingered and glared at Rocky with a grin that was equal parts triumph and mischief. As she shuffled past, her scent caught Rocky. Perfume, heavy and musty. The same scent he'd felt earlier, whilst passing the megastore. His lips thinned. He kept his composure. He kept his face. "This way, madam," Pong said, opening an adjacent door as if it were a stage curtain. "Would you like refreshments, champagne, anything at all, and I mean anything? You are now the guest of the Gilded Spire." Adrian piped a giggle, and as if the city itself were conspiring to be charming for a moment. "I wouldn't mind some champagne." The door closed around them like a swallow taking in the night. Behind the closed door, the Sultan's smoke breathed on, the cigars turning the room into a small private fog. Frederic stood in the corridor for a moment longer. His uniform sat on him like someone else's intention. He adjusted the lapel and let the new badge weight his chest with borrowed rightness. He listened. The casino's pulse thudded through the walls, music, coins, the discreet rustle of plans being made in rooms where men bet with other people's cities. He moved. The timeline had advanced. The clock beat down. The game, the kill, and the delicate order of consequence began to click into place. Chapter 6. Servers. Frederic climbed the service staircase, steps measured as though some divine hand compelled his path. The air grew thinner with each landing, silence punctuated only by the drone of unseen machines. On the final stretch, a door sealed with magnetic locks exhaled a faint hiss, sucking in what little breath lingered in the corridor. "To your left," the voice whispered in his ear, metallic yet intimate. "That's the server room. Get inside. Patch me through. Their logs will show us the Sultan's movements, his plans, the casino's hands." Frederic pushed the door, slipping inside with the fluidity of shadow. The room bled neon light, panels stacked like metallic tombstones humming in chorus. Lines of data pulsed across displays, bathing the chamber in a cold, artificial glow. Amongst the machines, a single technician bent at work, muttering, singing off-key. "Hit me, baby, one more time." Frederic moved before the song could reach its chorus, one hand over the man's mouth, the other clasping his eyes shut, a clean, practiced chokehold, silent as prayer. The technician's body sagged, then yielded to unconsciousness. Frederic laid him down as though tucking away a child. From his watch, a slender wire snaked out. He slid it into the terminal port, and the screen shivered, shifting allegiance. "Your luck," the voice cackled in his ear, "never ceases to amaze me. I've got them, movements, timings. After the initial introductions, they're heading for the penthouse. That's where the Sultan will conduct his private dealings. Move now, plan on the way. I'll find you an exit when the time comes." Frederic unplugged, his face unreadable. "Got it," he murmured, then vanished from the neon glow, leaving the server room to hum over its sleeping guardian. Adrian, meanwhile, was adrift in her own intoxication. Champagne in hand, her body buzzed with the fragile electricity of victory. Pong had left her a minute ago, promising more comforts. Alone, her mind began to curdle. "What if," she whispered, clutching the glass, "they realize it wasn't me who pulled the lever? It was my palm, yes, but it was the drunk who made it happen. What if they throw me out?" The thought festered. Her stomach turned. She lurched forward, spilling bile and champagne onto polished marble. The acrid smell mingled with perfume and sweat. Pain speared her skull, migraines that made the light seem to strobe. "I need... Pong, I want my money. It's mine. They must give it to me." Her reflection in the champagne glass twitched back at her, a stranger's face quivering. She clawed at her pocket, pulling free a small vial of pills. 2 vanished down her throat, washed with more champagne. Her breathing slowed. She steadied herself, rose on trembling legs, and pushed open the door. The 2 statue-like guards barely acknowledged her exit. Down the corridor, Rocky still stood like a sentinel at the staircase, arms folded, gaze watchful. "Excuse me," Adrian barked, clinging to the wall as she staggered forward. "That manager, Pong, the man I came up with. Did he go downstairs? I must find him." "No, ma'am," Rocky replied evenly. His eyes flickered past her, scanning the corridor behind. At that moment, the smaller door opened. Out strode the hulking politician, 1 guard at his side. Behind him, the Sultan emerged, a slow tide of silk and smoke, flanked by 2 spectral figures, tall, thin, their frames bending the light like glass rods. 2 more guards bracketed them, their presence heavy as iron. Rocky's blood quickened. "Bingo," he thought. "Ma'am, no one's passed this way since you," he said without breaking his gaze from the Sultan. "If the manager left, it would have been through the other corridor. Still, let me help you." Adrian, drunk and twitching, nodded eagerly. Yes, help me." She smiled wide, oblivious to his intent, perfume leaking from her bag. The scent struck Rocky's nostrils, and memory hit like a blow. One of his earlier marks. His hand flexed, but he kept composure, his posture still. The Sultan and his entourage moved toward the lift, gravity in their wake. Rocky seized the moment. He guided Adrian, shadowing the group as they filed in. Inside the elevator, silence thickened. The politician's guard pressed 48. The Sultan's men stared straight ahead. Rocky, uneasy under so many eyes, forced his voice steady. 10. Please. Floor 10. Adrian leaned against the mirrored wall, her complexion pale, body swaying, a thin line of vomit still staining her shoes. Her lips moved faintly, repeating to herself, "It's mine. The money's mine." The doors slid shut. The ascent began. Chapter 7. The elevator. The doors sealed with a metallic sigh, trapping 9 bodies into a space built for 6. The air instantly thickened with tobacco smoke. Adrian's cheap perfume, the faint trace of Rocky's sweat, the Sultan's peppered cologne, all fighting for dominance in this elevating coffin. Adrian coughed, politely at first, then violently. The cough turned into a retch, a convulsion of body and throat that bent and made her double over. Rocky, reacting too quickly, grabbed her shoulders in support, just as Adrian's head snapped back, cracking him square on the nose. "Shit!" Rocky hissed, clutching his face. The elevator chimed a gentle melodic beep, far too serene for the chaos inside. Rocky stumbled backwards in anguish, colliding with one of the suited bodyguards. The man grunted, losing his footing, and his bulk slammed square against the control panel. Buttons lit up like a festival lantern. Nearly every single floor was pressed. The lift chimed again. Ding! Level 3. The doors slid open onto an empty corridor bathed in sterile white light. No one moved. "Oh no, I'm terribly sorry," Adrian stammered, face red, half bowing. The guards muttered in contempt, but didn't meet her eye. One finally spoke, tone clipped. "It can't be helped. Stay the course." A heavy silence clung to the group until the Sultan exhaled a long stream of smoke, and he spoke, voice low and rich, as if pulled from an older world. "An ant who forgets the weight of its grain, he said, believes itself a king. But when the rains come, all tunnels drown, and the river cares not for titles nor crowns. No one answered. His words floated in the smoke, unsettling and absolute. Rocky pinched his bleeding nose with a crumpled tissue, then, with mock courtesy, offered one to Adrian. She took it, wide-eyed, dabbing at her mouth. Then Rocky turned, cheeky grin in place, and extended the tissue towards the Sultan himself. The Sultan regarded him with an expression carved from stone, eyes black as oil. He waved Rocky off, rings glinting, rubies and emeralds, heavy enough to fund a small district. The faint scent of pepper and charred cedar hung on his robes. 50 million yen, at least, Rocky thought, swallowing hard. A walking treasure chest. The doors sealed. The lift climbed. To distract himself, Rocky shuffled closer to the guards, fingers ghosting through pockets with the deftness of instinct, a clipped mutter. "Isn't this nice?" The politician turned his fleshy face towards him, eyebrows raised. "The spire, you mean? Yes, magnificent. Luxury at the heart of our city." "It brings people together," Rocky said smoothly, eyes still on a guard's wallet. "All walks of life." The politician smiled, eager for an audience. "Are you a constituent of this lovely city?" "Yes," Rocky lied. "Recently moved in, settling nicely." "Well, don't forget to vote Brampton in the next election. Free health care for all local citizens." Ding, level 5. The doors yawned open, no one moved, and then closed again. "Free?" Rocky raised his brows. "Yes, free," one of the guards snorted. "Free, you say?" Rocky leaned in with mock conviction. "You heard it straight from the horse's mouth." "Free," Adrian chimed in, wobbling slightly. "How can it be free?" The politician puffed. "It's not a gimmick. Mr. Hampton has an outstanding track record." "Didn't he get tied up in trafficking 5 years ago?" Rocky cut in. "Never convicted. Lies spread by our enemies. Cancel culture propaganda." Ding, level 7. Doors open, shut. Rocky laughed lightly, rifling another pocket. "With all this AI, how am I supposed to believe anything? I can't believe what I hear, can't believe what I see, can't believe what I read. What's reality anymore? How do I know what's true?" The politician spread his hands. "But I'm here, in the flesh, that you can believe." "Level 10, sang the robotic voice. The doors opened with a hiss. Rocky guided Adrian gently out, both of them stumbling into the corridor. Behind them, the Sultan's voice followed, heavy as stone. "Strings. Curious things, aren't they? Invisible until they knot. And knots in time choke the puppet as easily as they guide it." The doors sealed. The elevator carried the Sultan and his entourage upward, the faint smoke of cigars spilling through the cracks like incense. Chapter 8. Ties. Frederic entered the penthouse of level 48 with the calm grace of someone who had already measured its exits and imagined its ghosts. Floor-to-ceiling windows caught the city in a merciless frame. Pink clouds pulsing from the spire's neon beam above. A river of holographic adverts rolling endlessly across the mid-levels. The lower city writhing like a nest of lights and shadows. Inside, cream carpets swallowed his footsteps. A fire cracked and roared with the unnatural perfection of imported oak. The flicker of orange firelight smearing itself across the polished walls. Frederic opened the balcony doors, the night air rushing in cold and high, whipping across his antennae. He traced the rail with long fingers, considered the roof above, then turned back to an air vent disguised in the wall paneling. "What's the plan?" came the voice in his ear, lazy but insistent. "Gas. Through the vents," Frederic murmured, silent, elegant. "No time, they're in the lift. Back inside, hide." Frederic obeyed, slipping back through the balcony doors. He noticed a slatted panel beside the fireplace, popped it open with the faintest click, and folded himself in, like a shadow, into its dark crawl. Just as he sealed himself away, the door opened. Boots first. 3 guards, sweeping the penthouse with cold precision. Clear 1. Clear 2. Clear 3. Then the Sultan and the politician entered, their silhouettes blotting the city lights. 2 guards stayed outside like statues. The men walked slowly towards the windows, gazing down over the empire of neon. Frederic held himself still, listening. "Enough with the formalities," the politician said, voice coarse with cigars. "Let's get down to business." "Yes, let's," the Sultan replied, words smooth as honey yet weighed with gravity. Meanwhile, Rocky guided Adrian down a wide corridor lined with portraits. "Where are we going?" Adrian asked, clutching their champagne glass like a talisman. "I told you, Pong didn't go down the stairs. I'm hoping he went to his office." "You hope?" Adrian squinted. "Well, yes, hope. First day on the job, remember? But you're not staff. You're here because—" "Jackpot?" Adrian's voice brightened, spilling like light from a crack. "Yes, the jackpot. The slot machine sang my name. The jackpot." Rocky's eyes glinted like polished knives. Adrian's smile faltered. "But I think they'll cheat me. Pong left me, vanished. I've been abandoned." Rocky softened his voice, conspiratorial, sly. "Pretty little head like yours shouldn't worry. We'll find Pong. We'll get your money." Adrian blushed. "Pretty? Who, me?" "Call me Rocky." He grinned. "What should I call you?" "Adrian. Not ma'am, Adrian." Back in the penthouse, the politician paced, his words spilling with the confidence of someone who had never heard no. "Dr. Brockovich has surpassed augmentation. Not just heads, whole bodies. Imagine the speed of a cheetah, the lungs of a whale, the skin of a crocodile. All yours, all human. Not fantasy, fact. We only need funding." "How much?" the Sultan asked. The politician chuckled. "How long is a piece of string? We'll need partners, investors, but when the market breaks, we'll own it, no rivals, a monopoly written in bone." He poured himself a laugh and continued. "The old head augmentations were messy, addictive, expensive pills, placebos, tricks to drain wallets. The new project is seamless, the next human form, the final draft." The Sultan was silent, his gaze fixed on the neon river below. Then slowly he spoke, his words measured, each one carrying the weight of sand across centuries. "Men dream of change as if it were destiny, but the need is never so urgent as they claim. Once my people carried water in clay pots and slept beneath canvas stretched against the wind. They were no less human than now. Perhaps they were more. In the old markets of Constantinople, I would watch the ants gather along the stones. Tireless, patient, each knew its path. And yet, when a boy poured honey to tempt them, they lost all order. They swarmed, fought, drowned in sweetness. So too with men. You give them promises of new bodies, new forms, new glories. They will not ask whether such things are needed. They will simply devour until they cannot remember who they once were." He let the silence grow, the fire crackling as if in agreement. The words lingered like smoke. The politician smiled thinly and fetched a bottle of Remy Martin, pouring 2 thick glasses. The fire snapped in applause. Frederic, listening, was a still blade in the dark. Rocky and Adrian eventually stumbled into a suite of cramped offices. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead, papers piled like failed ideas. "Excuse me," Rocky called. "Anyone in here?" A small, nervous man poked his head out of a cubicle. His glasses magnified his eyes until they looked amphibious. "What are you doing here?" "Security, Unit 24, Rocky said smoothly. "This guest, Adrian, hit the jackpot. Pong brought her up, then disappeared. We're looking for him." "Strange," the man muttered, adjusting his glasses. "Peculiar indeed." "Who's peculiar?" "We're looking for Pong, not some guy called Peculiar." No, the situation is peculiar." "Oh." Rocky hesitated, then puffed himself up. "I know what peculiar means." "Do you?" The little man tilted his head. "Go on, then." Rocky blinked, scrambling. It means, when something is, really, like, neat. Adrian burst out laughing, clutching her side. Rocky flushed crimson, shooting her a sharp look. So, Rocky growled, do you know where Pong is or not? The man sniffed. Why would he be here? His office is on level 24, security wing. Service lift will take you there, right, then left. Simple. Rocky forced a smile, turning away. Thank you. Adrian bowed awkwardly, still smiling from Rocky's blunder, and followed him out. Together they wind their way to the service lift. The hunt for Pong continued. Chapter 9. Culmination. The elevator doors sighed open and spilled them into a corridor that smelled of cable dust and institutional bleach. Fluorescent strips lined the ceiling in a nervous, jittery rhythm. Rocky stepped out first, hips loose, blazer settling, and Adrian followed like a puppet on a string, champagne still in one hand, the perfume in her bag. Service wing, Rocky murmured. Servers. Security, that sort of lovely place. They moved along a narrow passage where the walls were lined with labelled doors, utility, HVAC, server access. The signboards polished. Midway down, a regular cadence of boots approached, heavy, purposeful. Rocky glanced at Adrian and, without speaking, veered toward the nearest unmarked door, server room A, and slipped inside. The room was colder. Rows of cabinets stood like anonymous altars, their faces blinking with LEDs in green, red, and amber hymns. Screens gleamed with cascading text that meant nothing to Adrian and everything to those it served. For a heartbeat, the place seemed sacred, a temple for the city's unseen priests. Why are we in here? Adrian asked, whispering with the thin, brittle voice of someone terrified that noise itself might bruise the world. Maybe someone here can help, Rocky said. He sounded slippery with bravado. He'd never been anything but that. A man whose truth was theft. Halfway down the aisle, a shape lay folded in shadow. Something cold brushed Rocky's shin. He lifted his foot, stomped. What is it? Adrian hissed. Rocky stomped again. The shape did not move. Get a light, Adrian whispered. He angled the monitor's glow downward. The screen washed the figure in a clinical blue. The man slumped there, uniformed, headset tangled, one cheek pressed to the cold floor, the crimson at his temple, a terrible punctuation mark. Adrian exhaled a soft, stunned sound. Oh my God, she breathed. You've killed him. Rocky looked at the body as if reading a note he'd been handed in a foreign language. Why would someone be lying here? He said aloud, more to the room than to her. Pervert? Maintenance accident? Wrong place, wrong time, classic. He's not moving. Adrian's voice trembled. There's so much blood. Dead people don't move, Rocky said flatly. His hand hovered near the dead man as if reluctant to touch fate. Perverts get no sympathy from me. He was trying to be flippant. His mouth had the wrong shape for jokes. Adrian's world held its breath. This is my life, she whispered. You're a maniac. No. Rocky stepped closer, the fluorescent light cutting the angle of his jaw. You're my accomplice now. What? Her response hit the air like a thrown thing. His blood is on you. He said it like an accusation and an obvious fact. Adrian turned away, palms splayed as if to prove cleanliness. If the police come, what do you tell them? You go to the station and say you were visiting the servers, saw a man on the floor, and then what? You cry? Adrian's breath came quicker, a bad rhythm. She clutched at her chest, the plastic of the champagne flute, a ridiculous weight. I'm not cut out for this. Her face trembled, between nausea and disbelief. This is insane. Why am I here? Why is this my life? Rocky rose to his full height, hands tucked behind his back, as though delivering a lecture. Because now, you're part of it. You're in this city, in this building, in this room, with me and with him. He tilted his head toward the body. You can cry about fate, or you can adapt. Adrian shook her head violently. No, I didn't sign up for this. I want out. Rocky's smile thinned, sharp as glass. Look at you. Blood on your shoes, blood on your dress. You'll go down for this quicker than I will. You'll be the desperate little jackpot winner who slipped up. They'll lock you in a cell so small you'll dream of this server room's luxury. Her chest rose and fell too fast. She wanted to argue but couldn't. Rocky stepped closer, lowering his voice, coaxing. You have a choice. Two, actually. Option 1. You walk away from me right now, and when security finds you, you say what? That you stumbled into a corpse by accident. They won't care. You'll be guilty by geography. He leaned in, whispering the word into her ear. Prison. She shuddered. Option 2, he continued smoothly. You stick with me. You and I, we play the game together. We take the winnings. We hunt bigger prey. His eyes glinted. I'm not here for scraps, Adrian. I'm here for the Sultan. The rings on his hand alone, enough to buy a small island. That's the hunt. That's the kill shot. And I need an accomplice, not a liability. Her breath faltered into silence. Rocky let it stretch, watching the tension coil inside her. Finally, she said, I'm not cut out for this. Rocky's grin widened, cold and triumphant. Nobody ever is. That's the beauty of it. The city sharpens you, or it eats you. And you've already chosen without realizing. Adrian looked at the body one more time, then back at Rocky. Her face was pale, sick, but there was resignation in it now, a slow, reluctant nod. Good, Rocky said. His voice almost tender. That's the spirit. You'll learn. He plucked a tissue from his pocket, dabbed at his nose, then offered it to her with an unnervingly polite gesture. Wipe your hands. Blood's a dead giveaway. She obeyed, trembling but compliant. Okay, she whispered. Option 2. Good. Rocky exhaled as if settling an account. He reached into Adrian's bag and extracted the broken perfume bottle. Glass dust clinked like tiny knives as it spilled over the corpse, a foolish, almost obscene detail that made Adrian hiss. Rocky's face flickered with irritation and something like apology. We need a distraction. Rocky's fingers lit sparks as he moved between racks and pipes, a little frantic now. He yanked at a tangle of service cables and slammed a breaker with the blunt abandon of someone improvising leverage. Monitors blinked, the room's soft hum hiccuped, then died in half the cabinets. He found a cluster of wires, gripped and yanked hard. Chunk. The lights above the row went black. Chunk. The monitors stuttered and collapsed into static. The air conditioning choked and stopped. The cool breath of the server turned warm, heating up its mechanical lungs. The silence that followed was not quiet, but the noise of missing things. That should do it, Rocky said, breathless with the small triumph of simple sabotage. His hands were steady again. Cameras down, lights flicked. People will start moving. If our timing is right, we'll be carried past suspicion. But the building had been engineered with prestige in mind. The penthouse rode on a separate grid, its security schema insulated against the lower floor roughness. The big rooms and the private vaults were built to be impenetrable to the petty spoils of service-level chaos. They slipped between the racks, shadows among humming tombs, and the server room's dying lights flickered on their faces like a warning flare. The city outside the window kept glowing, as if it had not heard a thing. Chapter 10. Coalesce. Frederick still lay pinned in the crawlspace, body motionless, breath shallow. His ear twitched as the voice returned, soft and cutting. Something else is happening, Fred. The blackout runs from the 3rd floor all the way to 47th floor. It isn't us. There's another team at play here. Finish the transaction and get out. Below him the Sultan rose, his robe sweeping with theatrical weight. He padded toward the bathroom. Frederick's lips curved in the faintest smile. Luck, as ever, is an illusion. But I do seem to attract it. The 3 guards had already stationed themselves outside on the balcony, leaving only the politician behind, sipping Remy Martin with fat fingers wrapped around crystal. Frederic slid from the crawl space with the grace of a salamander emerging from a crack in stone. The politician's eyes widened, shock before comprehension. Gua! The word died within his throat. Frederic's blade kissed deep, parting skin and sound alike. The politician gagged, clutched at his own life as though it were a spilled drink he might still save. The sofa drank greedily, swayed turning dark with claret. His body wriggled, worm-like. Frederic was already gone. He clambered into the vent, sealed it shut behind him, and left only silence and death to argue over the room. The Sultan, meanwhile, flushed the toilet. He stood at the mirror, fingers stroking his beard, eyes fixed on his own reflection, with a terrible calm. Full-body augmentation, he mused, clicking his tongue. The world always wishes for more. But what it needs... He turned the tap, washed his hands with ritual precision, and began humming softly, almost childlike. Happy birthday to you. He dried his hands, adjusted his robes, and stepped back into chaos. The smell of blood hit him first. His roar summoned guards, and, instantly, the room fractured into violence. Blades unsheathed, fists flying. The Sultan's men clashed with the politicians in blind loyalty, each convinced the other had struck the blow. Outside the door, the flanking guards stood oblivious, statues in their posts. Elsewhere, Rocky and Adrian climbed, their breath ragged in the red wash of emergency lights. The stairwell was a ribcage of iron and shadow, every clang of their shoes echoing like a warning. "Do you think it's safe?" Adrian panted. "What if security comes this way?" Rocky didn't break stride. "Then we're security too. We'll tell them we're escorting a client." Adrian forced a grin. Yes, of course, blending in. Emotional resilience, positive thinking. Rocky smirked at the phrase. She's learning already. At last they reached the landing of 48. Rocky crept forward and peeked around the corner. Guards, heavy men flanking the penthouse door, still as carved obsidian. "Shit," Rocky muttered. "What now?" His eyes darted upward. The vents, always the vents. "Okay, I got it," he whispered. "I'm going to lift you up. You're going to crawl through the ductwork, make your way to the penthouse, and tell me what you see." "Me?" Adrian's voice cracked. "Yes, you, Adrian. You're the lucky one, remember? Just a peek and back again." Adrian swallowed hard, then nodded. Fine. I'll do it." Rocky's grin flashed wolfish. He hoisted her up, pried off the vent's cover, and slid her inside like a parcel into a chute. She pulled the hatch shut behind her, sealing herself into a tight crawl of metal dust and echoes. The duct was suffocatingly narrow. Every shuffle of knee and elbow rang out like thunder in her ears. She whispered encouragement to herself. Left, keep going, just keep going. Then, boink. Her forehead cracked against something solid. No, not something, someone. Another face, pale in the gloom, eyes sharp, cold, reptilian. Frederic. For a moment neither spoke. The echo of pipes below and above filled the silence. Then Frederic's voice, calm as death. "What team are you with?" Adrian's mouth went dry. "Team?" "Yes." He blinked, slow as a snake. "Answer." "If I said Delta," she whispered, her voice trembling, "would you believe me?" Frederic stared at her for a long, unreadable moment. And in that suspended breath, Adrian realized she had just collided with something far worse than Rocky's schemes. Chapter 11. The House Always Wins. The obsidian guards at the penthouse door stiffened at the sound of violence within. They breached as one, boots slamming into polished marble. Chaos bloomed instantly. The Sultan's wiry guards moved like vipers, thin, fast, brutal in their precision. They wrapped themselves around their larger opponents, limbs tightening like rope. One wiry guard snaked an arm across a throat, tightening until eyes bulged and teeth gnashed. A wet crack split the air, followed by a slack collapse. But brute strength answered finesse. A politician's hulking guard leapt into the air and came down like a hammer. crushing the wiry man beneath him, bones splintered, spine snapping in two. The Sultan, robes flaring, tried to retreat, but a massive hand seized his leg and yanked him down. "You will pay for this," roared the brute, stomping hard until the Sultan's legs twisted, bones cracking like dry twigs. The guard climbed over him, raising his fist for the final blow. Thunk. A blade flew, silent and perfect. It buried itself in the back of his skull. His eyes rolled. He toppled like felled timber, crushing the Sultan beneath his enormous weight. The surviving, wiry guard turned, bloodied but unbroken. He clashed with the last brute in the kitchen. Steel sang, then bit. Both men carved at each other, crimson spraying across cream walls and polished stone. They fell together in a heap, twitching, leaking their lives out onto the floor. Silence returned, and the stink of blood. Rocky crept to the door and peeked in. The scene was carnage, bodies stacked like butcher's cuts, furniture overturned, velvet stained and dark. A slow smirk crept across his face. What luck indeed. He slipped inside, eyes shining as they locked on the Sultan's hand, protruding from the heap, jeweled fingers glinting in the dim light. Rocky crouched, prying the rings loose one by one, whispering as he worked. "Oh, great Sultan, how the tables have turned. Here I am, the little ant. Isn't that what you called me? Well, watch this ant grow wings." The Sultan groaned weakly, glaring up through swollen eyes. You baboon, I'll have you hanged." Rocky grinned widely, slipped the last ring into his pocket and delivered a casual kick to the Sultan's temple. The man slumped, unconscious, buried under flesh and suits. "Not today, old man. Not today or any other day, in fact." In the vents, Frederick's eyes glimmered as he studied Adrian, their faces uncomfortably close in the narrow duct. "Are you with that voice I heard earlier?" he asked, tone low and measured. "Would you believe me if I said no?" Adrian replied, nervous but holding his gaze. Frederick tilted his head. "So what now?" Adrian swallowed. "I don't know who you are or what you're doing crawling through air ducts. You're not a pervert, are you?" Frederick blinked slowly. "I could ask you the same." "Ask me what?" "If you're a pervert." "A pervert?" Adrian hissed. Yes, you're crawling through ducts toward the penthouse, ergo a pervert. That makes no sense. You're crawling away from the penthouse." "Precisely," Frederick said calmly. "I have finished being a pervert. You, madame, are still in progress." Adrian gasped. "Finish being a pervert? That's disgusting. Leering, touching yourself." Frederick's voice cut sharp. "Madame Delta, I suggest we leave before the situation below unfolds against us." Adrian blinked, then nodded quickly. "You're right. I'll scooch back the way I came. We can exit there." "Good idea." Outside, Rocky leaned close to the vent's grate. His voice, casual as a bartender's, echoed up the shaft. Adrian, what are you doing? We've got what we came for. Let's get going." The casino, high above the glowing sprawl, held its silence, its walls painted in blood, its lesson written in rings. The house always wins. Chapter 12. Liberty never sleeps. Pong stood on the casino floor, unshaken. Above, the great holographic koi swam lazy circles across the ceiling. Machines swallowed and vomited coins, lights flashed in seizure-bright patterns, and drunken patrons staggered between tables in their endless ritual. Pong had already called the local PD, and the detective arrived long ago with a small army. His men swept the floors with grim efficiency, boots clanging on the gilded tiles. "Detective," Pong said smoothly, "we have a missing jackpot winner, a missing high roller, and a suspicious guard roaming our establishment. Locate them. Apprehend them at once." The detective scowled. "I suggest you close the casino, sir. If this spills in front of the public—" "Are you mad?" Pong cut him off. "The casino never sleeps. The casino always wins. Detective, do your job." The detective snarled, literally, teeth gnashing in an animal tick. "Grr! Woof! Pong didn't flinch. The detective growled once more, then backed down, retreating to the emergency elevator with his men. His radio spat static. "Sir, we've got a body in the linen basket, another in the server room." The detective lifted the radio, his jaw flexed. "Cordon off the areas. Conduct a full sweep. Forensics on scene immediately. This is a murder case now." "Copy that, sir." Berger. Silence. He turned back to Pong, voice rising. "2 dead bodies in your casino. This is an active crime scene. Shut it down." Pong's lips curled in disgust. He sighed through his nose, raised a hand and gave the order. Slowly, reluctantly, the casino began to dim. Patrons herded out in drunken protests, lights dulled, marshals set up, cordons while forensics in white suits snapped on gloves and began dusting and swabbing everything in sight. Employees were gathered in the carport for interviews. The sweep climbed upward, floor by floor, silence replacing neon as each level emptied. Then at the penthouse, a hatch creaked. Out crawled Adrian, eyes wide, followed by Frederic. For a heartbeat, Frederic considered slithering back into the ducts, but it was too late. "Adrian! Adrian!" Rocky's voice rang. He appeared from the carnage, stepping over the heap of bodies, grinning in triumph, until the muzzles of police rifles froze him mid-step. "Shy!" He froze, hands half raised. "Hey, fellas, would you believe me if I said this was all one big misunderstanding?" The detective emerged from the service elevator, taking in the scene of blood and broken men. He exhaled a sharp laugh. "Well, I'll be. Looks like we just missed the party." Rocky smiled nervously. Adrian hung her head. Frederic stood like carved stone. Their Miranda rights were read in flat, rehearsed voices. Cold cuffs snapped tight. One by one, they were escorted out of the penthouse and into the police vans. The casino stood silent, humming, eternal. The house always wins. Epilogue. Pong lingered on the ground floor as the last patrons were herded out. The holographic koi swam their endless loop above, casting ripples of shifting light across his face. He adjusted his cufflinks, surveying the empty hall now littered with cigarette butts and abandoned chips. A faint smile touched his lips. "Liberty never sleeps," he whispered to himself, as if the words were both prayer and promise. The koi flickered, turned, and kept circling. The house had fed, and tomorrow it would feed again. End. Written by Criege Pennant.